Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about some special shades in Pat McGrath's palettes, and specifically rank Pat McGrath's palettes based on her special shades. So you might be wondering why I have so many Pat McGrath palettes. Well, first of all, I'm a big fan of hers and I am doing giveaways every now and then. So we have the Mothership Divine Rose 2 in rose gold set for the next giveaway, and the details are listed below, so all you have to do is be subscribed. Alright, moving on to today's video. So today I wanted to find out, where does the new Pat McGrath palette Divine Rose 2 rank between all of her other palette releases, including all the minis, and I'm also going to compare it with previous versions of the same palette. So for example, we're going to have the Star Wars palette and the other Mothership palettes. The only palette that I didn't get of hers was the Golden Opulence, which was released in January, and I just didn't find that palette appealing enough compared to these new releases, which I thought were really wonderful. So I'm going to include all of the purchases that I've made, including all the Star Wars that came out like around December. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's start with the most recent palette, which is the Divine Rose Gold limited edition that just came out in the month of June, and my favorite shade being the Extraterrestrial with the trichrome effect. I'm only going to look at special shades in this video, so I will compare and rank these by special shades and I'm only going to use special shades that are of my interest. So I'm going to move on to the next palette. So now I'm going to move on to the Mothership 2 Mothership Sublime, or the green palette as I like to call it, and my favorite special shade here has definitely got to be that one green. And comparing it side by side with the Extraterrestrial, it's not trichrome, but it's definitely a very luxurious and beautiful green in there, and I think that it's very close to the green in the Mothership Divine Rose 2 palette. So I'm going to swatch them next to each other and I'm going to rank it between the two. Right now the Mothership Divine Rose 2 comes in second, and so I'm not going to include the Decadence palette in this ranking because it doesn't really have any special shades. So between the two that I currently just looked at, the number one would be the DR2, which is just short for Divine Rose 2, and second would be probably the Sublime, and then third would be the Decadence because it doesn't have any special shades. Before I look at the Mothership Midnight Sun or purple palette that came out fall of last year, I want to be consistent with the greens that I was looking at, and one of her palettes that has a really nice special shade in green is the Nocturnal Nirvana, which I believe also came out late last year, and it was one of my favorites when I did a ranking video. And as you can see, it's actually so much more beautiful than the green palette or the Mothership 2, and then the favorite would still be the DR2. So I think that in my ranking system I'll probably rank it number 2 in comparison to the other palettes that I just looked at. But is it going to be number 2 compared to all of her palettes or not? Let's find out. Right now we have her at number 2. So moving on to the next palette that has a special shade that could be close enough to what we just looked at. Perhaps I have to look at the purple from the Midnight Sun palette. I know I've been complaining about this palette for so long in my videos because it's just not up to par with the rest. Like, you have to go in many times to get a decent swatch. I know some of you said that you got like a better batch of this palette and yours was not as patchy as mine, but for some reason mine just doesn't have like a duochrome look to that purple, and for that I think that maybe the Sublime or the other Motherships might be more superior to this palette as far as special shades. So because of that, I think that I will put the Mothership Midnight Sun after all of these, but I still want to give it another chance. So far ranking by special shades, my favorite would still be the Divine Rose 2, then the Nocturnal Nirvana, then the Midnight Sun, then the Mothership Sublime Green, and then lastly the Decadence because it doesn't have any special shades. So let's pick up another palette that would have special shades of interest, and we can't go too far without picking up the Mothership Bronze Seduction palette, which I think this was the only Mothership palette that had more than 2 special shades of interest. So I'm going to be swatching both the red shade, which is like a red gold shade, and also that green lime shade, and both of those shades were fantastic. And that's why I think this Bronze Seduction palette has constantly come up in people's ranking as number 1 or number 2, and it's definitely one of her better palettes. So I can't make up my mind which shade I like the best. Probably I think the lime yellow gold color, and I think for that this palette deserves to get a good ranking. So let's compare the special shades that we have so far and see how we can rank them. So right now the gold and the lime color are definitely duochromy, but the multi-chromes and trichrome is probably better. So I would still go ahead and say number 1 is the DR2, 2 is the Nocturnal Nirvana, and 3 is the Bronze Seduction. My next favorite has got to be the Ritualistic Rose Quad that also came out at the same time as the Nocturnal Nirvana. My favorite special shades in here are probably this beautiful rosy peach color and the other eyeshadow toppers, not really like meant to be used by themselves, but they have a beautiful shift to them. And the other one is more like a dark pink, but this one right here is comparable to the VR Rose, and it has such a beautiful quality to it. And I think that if I were to rank it between this and the other eyeshadow palettes as far as special shades wise, I would probably say it's not as good as the Nocturnal Nirvana, and it's not as good as the Bronze Seduction, but it's still better than the Mothership Sublime, and probably better than that purple palette or the Midnight Sun. So here I'm going to pick them up and re-rank them one more time. So you can see it's in position number 5. All right, so now let's move on to looking at the blue special shades. And if I had to choose a palette of hers that had a beautiful blue special shade into it, or at least 2 beautiful blue shades, special shades, it would be the Mothership one, because it has a very nice dark blue and a very nice light blue in there. I don't know if you can see, but the dark blue has a very subtle shift to it. It has a white, almost like silvery blue shade, which is comparable to the new Urban Decay Lucid. And I think that this makes it one of her better palettes, and it's definitely a better quality compared to the Midnight Sun. And so for that, I think that this definitely ranks a lot better than the Midnight Sun purple, and I would probably put that in a higher position than Midnight Sun. Probably like now I would put that ahead of Midnight Sun. And moving on to the next great palette of hers, which has a nice bluey violet in it, I would probably pick Subversive palette. And this palette has definitely got to be one of her really good palettes and a really nice quality. And this blue, there's nothing quite like it, and I think that is more superior than the Midnight Sun as well. And it has a really nice pink with a duochrome shift to it as well. So I would definitely think this is much better than her other, actually not much better than her older releases or the releases that we just talked about. So if I were to rank these, I would probably say it's in position number 5. And then now let's look at some more recent releases. The latest version of the Divine Rose has this limited edition pink packaging, which also sold out within the first day that it was released. And I was fortunate to be able to have been given one by a good friend of mine. And I really think that this VR Rose is the most amazing part of the Divine Rose palette. And as you can see, it has a beautiful shift, and it just takes any neutral look to the next level. And I think that it was copied in the new Natasha Denona Bronze palette, and it makes this palette just go above and beyond a regular palette. And I think that if I were to rank these palettes by special shades, which is what we're doing in this video, the Divine Rose definitely has at least a number 2 spot. Probably not as good as the Divine Rose 2 with the Extraterrestrial, but the Divine Rose 1, it definitely has a good spot. And at the very least, this palette, can be used near the eye, whereas the Divine Rose 2, you can't use it near the immediate eye area because of the formula that's in the special shade, but still I would rank it as my number 2 palette. Now let's move on to the minis. So for the minis, one of my favorites, which I haven't talked much about in my videos, is the Dark Star palette. And the reason I picked this up was because it had this really nice interstellar shade. This shade is not really a duochrome, but it is still beautiful, and this is when the pans were like $65, and I still thought it was beautiful enough and comparable to the other blues that she released, and just for that one blue, I think it was worth it. I think the palette went down on sale eventually, but I paid full price for it, and I was really glad that I did, because I think it's one of my better mini palettes from her. And actually one of my favorite mini palettes from her has got to be one of the Star Wars palettes. I can't remember what this one was called, but this was one that I missed out on the launch date, and I ended up getting it from someone else, and it was just really nice. So if I had to rank these mini palettes, which by the way none of them have a duochrome or true duochrome inside them, I would probably say the blue and the yellow one were my favorite. Probably the yellow one my most favorite, and then the least favorite would be the La Vie en Rose, because I don't really reach for these shades of pink and purple that much these days. And so with that being said, the gold, the blue, the red, and the pink would be the ranking that I would give these mini palettes. And if I were to go by special shade, the Star Wars would be the least favorite. The green palette, the mini quad, the purple, and eventually the Nocturnal Nirvana, and Divine Rose 1 and Divine Rose 2. So there you have it. Divine Rose 2, as far as special shading, is probably my most favorite. And now if we're going to look at the quality of these releases, I want to do a quick comparison to see if the quality has gone down, because there's been some rumors online whether, you know, with every release she's made the batches different or not. So I decided to take a quick look for myself and find out if they are truly the same quality or not. It might be very subtle, but just from observation, it looks like some pans are more harder pressed than the others. Some have like a more tighter basket weave texture to them, and as far as the texture when swatching, it looks like some just might look more darker in the pan, but on the skin they come out absolutely the same. And let's see if there's anything else that we can notice with these releases with the pink packaging and black packaging. Obviously the pink limited edition was more sought after online, and therefore it sold out within the first 5 minutes. But when I look at to see if there's any difference, I didn't see much difference. So anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and make sure you're subscribed to my channel. As always, let me know what your favorite Pat palette was in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you next time.